Last week I got off the interstate at Lafayette, Indiana, and stopped the bus there by the Wabash River in a little park. And John Carter and I walked down to the water, wet a hook a while. A fellow about my age came down after a few minutes and said, "You know, you look a lot like Johnny Cash." And I said, "Well, that's what a lot of people tell me." He said, "The fish biting?" I said, "Not yet." And he said, "What do you use?" And I said, "Worms." He said, "Well, if you use a minnow, fish on the bottom, you might catch one of them old flathead catfish." So he loaned me a minnow, and I didn't catch no flathead catfish. But I got to talking to old Gene Ford, that was his name. And then he got to telling me his story, and about halfway through his story, he said, "You are Johnny Cash." And I said, "Well, I'll have to admit it." So then he told me about his wife, how she kept telling him she was going, and she finally went and took her little boy and girl with her. And he'd been out to California all these many months trying to win her back. He said he'd been fighting a losing battle, and he finally gave up a week ago and came back to Lafayette, Indiana. And he's spending his days and half his nights fishing on the Wabash River. And like me, he hadn't been catching any flathead catfish, but in the process of doing all that fishing and thinking, old Gene said he just about had his mind together. And he said, if it wasn't for the Wabash River, I'd be going out of my mind. And I said, "Gene, that's a good song title."
Where I grew up in Lafayette, we lived by the train tracks. That's where we used to hang out all the time, was down there. We'd ride dirt bikes and just hang out, build tree forts, all that kind of stuff.
Been working on the railroad just to pass my time away. Can't you hear the whistle blowing? Rise up so early in the morning. Can't you hear the captain shouting? Dial your horn.
Yeah, I love the Stones and reggae. I like any music, really. I listen to all kinds of stuff, even classical or just anything. I just love music. It was a nickname that stuck. My last name's Isbell, and Izzy was the nickname. I think my uncle had the same thing, Izzy, you know.
Fish ain't biting, I don't really care. I'm in no hurry, like that Wabash River there.
You know, I grew up in Indiana as a kid. The only access I had to music was Don Kirshner's rock concert. You had a magazine, Cream, and Hit Parader. Rolling Stone. It was, as a teenager, I didn't give a shit about it. It wasn't on the list, but
you had those two outlets, and that was it. And that's down at the Village Pantry 7-Eleven, you know, where you got to ride your bike through the snow in the winter just for that. That was the access, and that's what we lived for.
Drowning memories of her and crying, crying, crying. If it wasn't for the Wabash River.
But it was all about, you know, making that connection, getting the music, getting those magazines. But this took days, weeks, months, you know, to get that stuff. And now it's boom, touch of the button, and there you have it.
Sitting here beneath my tree, Lord, I love her.
Well, I got to agree with you on the artwork. That was one of the joys of the music, was I loved the artwork. And I come from an artistic background as far as drawing. You know, I loved drawing in school. I still like to do cartoon stuff. I really, really loved the artwork and having the lyrics and the pictures. I mean, that was actually a big, big part of it.
And this willow tree and my pole and my line.
So how did you learn guitar?
Self-taught. Noodler. Just picking around. Ramones was my favorite, and I highly recommend that to anybody that wants to learn the guitar. First, just learn a bar chord and play Ramones songs, because it's your dexterity build up, you know, your left, right, you know, 3rd fret, 5th fret, and back. You don't even need to learn the notes to start out.
I'd be going out of my mind.
Yeah, we, you know, Axl and I started probably 78, 79 back in Indiana. I think about 1980 I came out to California.
How it started was I've always wanted to do like just a percussion thing. I've always been into drums. I played drums before I played guitar or bass.
Yeah, I met Izzy. Izzy played bass in Shire. You know, he was a scenester for sure, and he stood out like a sore thumb. He looked like a little mini, you know, Susie Sue, you know, like a pink leather jacket on, black hair, you know, spiked all over the place. And eventually, somehow, Izzy needed somewhere to stay, so he moved into my mom's place in the dining room. He had this really cool little, like, he had it set up really cool. And then that's when the brainstorming started. You know, he was, you know, he was going to get Axl to come out to LA, and he did, and they had Hollywood Rose.
I was friends with Tracy Guns, who I went to school with. Said, listen, if you ever want to, you know, another guitar player, you know, I'd be happy to kind of come down and jam with you guys. And so he came up to me one day and goes, listen, I met this other guy, and I'd like to introduce him to you. I'd like to meet this guy. So we went to his, where his truck was, and he introduced me to Izzy, who at the time was Jeff. Said, you know, you guys are both guitar players, and I know you're both looking for bands. Why don't you guys talk? So that night, I talked to Izzy probably, I don't know, couple hours, talking about bands we liked and sort of directions, you know, and what he wanted. So me and Izzy were, you know, had done this kind of week-long sort of just jamming and stuff like that at his pad, and he said, listen, I got my friend is in town, and I don't know if Axl was out of town or maybe he was at home for a while and then flying out. But he said, you know, let's go meet him. He's our singer.
For a couple of years, Izzy was real good at, like, he'd been out there just long enough, and he was always good at scamming his way in, and I wasn't.
I was perfectly fine with, because it was Izzy, and I thought, even by this point, I thought Izzy was the coolest thing in the world. So, you know, he could have said, we're gonna be in a polka band, and I'd be like, all right. The band was originally called AXL, and this is when we were still calling Axel Bill. So, and I never liked the name, and I don't think Izzy liked the name, but Axel really wanted it. We had a little bit of leverage, Izzy and I, from something that happened. I can't even remember what, but we said, listen, we'll keep the band together, but we got to change the name.
We had, I had a thing that I called Axel. That was a project, you know, and I was writing songs, and I had them all in this little book, and I was like looking for people, and Izzy and I were trying to put it together. Axel eventually became me out of Izzy's suggestion. He goes, look, you live, breathe, sleep, walk, talk. Axel, why don't you just be Axel? I'm like, okay, I'm Axel. So then we called the band Rose.
Anyway, we called it Rose, and we did a lot of shows under the name Rose. It was a Spinal Tap moment where we did a sort of a search, and we saw another band called Rose. And if you've seen Spinal Tap, they were going like, we were the, you know, whatevers, and then we were the new whatevers. Like, you know, well, we were Hollywood Rose. That's how the name came about. We played that show at the Music Machine. Axel got pissed off. I think I bumped into him on stage. I can't remember exactly. It's something like that. And it was like, fuck it, we're going to end this is where I'm leaving. So he essentially left.
Izzy joined London and Hollywood Rose fell apart. But, you know, Izzy was like, yeah, you know, this guy, he's really moldable. You know, he can really sing. He just needs some direction. We lost our singer in LA Guns, Mike Jagos, and I just, hey, Axel, do you want to sing for LA Guns? You know, the thing about Izzy and Axel is they were really responsible people. You know, they had jobs, and when Izzy didn't have a job, he would make jewelry and sell it on Melrose, you know, like really smart, you know. I mean, he didn't want to be in the street with no money, you know. And then Axel ended up managing Tower Video, you know. I mean, these guys, they're smart guys, you know. We had done, LA Guns in London had done a show together, and some really stupid crap went down. It's not even worth mentioning because it's hearsay. But Izzy quit. Axel got in a fight with, not a fight, but an argument with our manager, and our manager fired Axel, but we all lived together. So it was like really like weird. So that same night he got fired, we started Guns N' Roses. And I called Izzy the next day and said, hey, we're going to start this new band called Guns N' Roses. Do you want in? And he's like, yeah. Started with Rob Gardner was the drummer because he was the LA Guns drummer, and Oli Bike from Merciful Fate was our bass player. I think Oli left first because he didn't want to be in a glam band. And Rob left because his girlfriend gave him an ultimatum. Duff was the first guy to come in from the outside.
And as for Izzy, he wasn't from the school of fancy guitar playing. More a Keith Richards than an Eddie Van Halen. Not only a great songwriter, but in my eyes, the baddest man walking the planet. One night, when we were talking after rehearsal, Izzy mentioned a band called the Naughty Women, and it rang a bell. I know that band, I said, trying to place a name. I think I played a gig on the same bill with them once. Wait, Izzy, weren't they cross-dressers? Yep, Izzy said. I was the drummer.
Axel was hanging out with somebody I went to high school with, actually, or junior high school, and had disappeared for like a week. And when the next time I saw him was at a sound check at my second to last show, and he just started dictating to everybody, you know, like, and he was angry, and you know, it's like, whoa, who's this guy? You know, I don't know this guy, you know, and we had been living together for almost a year. Me and Izzy were just like looking at each other from across the stage, like, you know, this is weird, you know, like all of a sudden we weren't connected to Axel, you know, like he had taken over his space and was really talking a lot, and we weren't playing a lot that night. And then the next night was at the Waters Club in San Pedro, and he was real late. That was the first time he was ever late to anything. And we were all awkward and uncomfortable already. You know, we were just like, oh, you know, is he going to show up? Like, what is going on? You know? And I was just really uncomfortable, and I was just like, nah, I'll go back and do LA Guns. I'll figure this out.
On the drums, Stephen Good Adler.
Me and Slash, we grew up together. Childhood friends since we were 11, 12 years old. We went to junior high school and high school together.
You know, we met Slash. We ran an ad for a heavy metal punk glam guitarist, blues influenced. And Slash showed up and we said, nah. But he kept popping up everywhere we were at, and all of a sudden we started working together.
It's really funny because, like, none of us are from Los Angeles. And everybody, like, tries to label us as an LA band. We just all happened to have met there. And we were the only 5 guys that could have made up Guns N' Roses. I mean, we had different combinations of us in different bands, you know, throughout the time we were coming up and getting it together. And
yeah, there
was
would be 1 or 2 of the same guys.
We couldn't, there was nobody else in LA we could have played with, so it was inevitable that the 5 of us would get together because that was it. I mean, there was no other combinations that were going to work. You know?
Izzy and I booked this kind of punk rock tour because I was used to doing this West Coast. I knew all the club guys and the crash houses where we could crash. It was all done. We had a guy who would drive our gear. We got a U-Haul trailer.
And then we went on a road trip to the Pacific Northwest, and the car broke down and we hitchhiked to Seattle. And that was the sort of thing that really bonded us all together. But it was quite an experience. We made it to Seattle. We did a gig in Seattle on borrowed gear because all our stuff was trapped with the car and the U-Haul. And we borrowed a band called the Fastbacks gear. We played a show, and then we got a lift back to LA, and we were together from that point on.
The best place that the band that the GNR guys had, we all used to live in this like, I think it was about a 12 by 14, I call it the box.
In a box down by the ocean.
It literally was a rehearsal studio that we built bunks in, and we all lived in this thing. There was no running water or TVs or cable. There was nothing really. It was just a box. And we lived in this thing for a while. It's right behind where the Guitar Center is now on Sunset Strip. And yeah, you know, that seems to go with the territory. You know, you're always broke. It seems like when you're starting out.
Izzy was just running around learning about every fad that there was. So finally, at this point, he's just bored with everything except, you know, and just gets into his guitar, and it's real cool. He's like, you know, not doesn't worry about too much of anything.
Izzy would play through hollow bodies and kind of play more like kind of Keith Richards parts, which just happened to perfectly complement what Slash was playing and vice versa.
I keep a pretty small circle of, musician friends that, once you find some guys that are great players and you get along with them, then that's really the, you want to stick with that.
But Izzy was the one who, for me, embodied the attitude, who was the most consistent and best writer. He had a wonderful sense of rhythm. As far as his rhythm playing on guitar was concerned, there was a sense of rock and roll syncopation in his expression that was perfect.
We were the least likely to succeed, probably the most hated, despised band. Junkies, faggots, you name it. They didn't like us.
Well, I read somewhere where you guys have a situation where you don't necessarily like certain acts. Let me throw out some names. Aerosmith, how you guys feel about that?
No, it's not. I mean, it's not even getting to that point. I mean, it's like the question you ask about, like the bands is how do they feel? It's like with Crew, they probably don't care. I mean,
Yeah.
we just want to have a good time. We did with the Cult. That was a great one too.
Yeah.
As far as the other bands, we don't even pay attention to what's going on with them.
I think we ended up on Geffen on round 85. We were kicking up a lot of dust in Hollywood. We had a small, tight following. It seemed to me that it was sort of a small cult sort of following. We always were really tight with the music, and we didn't like anybody else even commenting on it really. And we signed with Geffen, and then I think it was almost a year before we actually got into a studio to record the album, because everybody that would come around, they had an idea. Hey, let's do an extra chorus on Paradise City. Let's change the intro to Jungle. Let's do this. Let's do that. We were like, let's not. And a year later, we'd spent the advance money. We're still sitting around, kind of going, maybe we should get busy, But we finally hooked up with Mike Klink.
Their music was first and foremost to them. They didn't care whether they sold 1 million copies. Or 10,000 copies. They were the real deal. They lived and breathed it. I always say they were like a gang. Yeah. They stuck together. They did everything together. It was the persistence, and I always tell everybody, in this business, you can't do it alone. That's right. It's a group effort. So it was the efforts of Alan Niven, the manager.
Very first band meeting I went to, only 2 members of the band turned up, one of which nodded out at the table. That was Izzy. He nodded out at the table, which just left me and Slash, and Slash then took me to meet his snake, and I have a pathological fear of snakes. And when you're dealing with characters like that, it becomes a little bit engaging.
Pushing the record label, it was Tom Zutaut, the A&R guy, who believed in the band.
Guns N' Roses scared people. I mean, Motley Crue were like the third-rate Kiss that were the laughing stock of L.A. Guns Guns N' Roses were these like dangerous drug addicts that everyone was scared of, and you know, MTV vowed from the day the album came out that they would never play something like Guns N' Roses ever.
On the first record, Appetite, it was Axl's. That was Axl's thing. He had a postcard that he had picked up at a place on Melrose Avenue. It was a cool, funky little shop. They had postcards and just really, I'm trying to think of the name of it. But he picked up a postcard at this place, that Robert Williams painting, and then he showed everybody. We're like, hey, that's cool. You know, let's go with that.
You were looking at the album covered here, but I got to ask the inner sleeve, man. What kind of picture? What is this picture all about?
That's a postcard.
Highly satanic.
That's a postcard.
Oh, really?
That's a picture.
As I understand it, this was banned by the record company.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't banned by the record company. It was banned by a lot of stores. The record company was actually pretty much into it. It was banned by Warner Brothers. They wouldn't produce the album cover that way. So we had to hire an independent artist to put the album cover together. It's a Robert Williams painting.
Let me explain the painting to you. It has a red monster in it. The red monster is jumping over the fence. It is killing the robot because the robot some way violated the female vendor of small toy robots.
And I got a phone call from Axl one day saying that he thought he had found something that would be good. And I went over to his apartment, and he'd been down to a place called the Soap Factory on Melrose, and he had this postcard. And I took one look at it, and I went, that's fucking perfect. And he looked at me and said, I was joking. He was in two minds about it, you know.
But the band had, we were pretty insular. We didn't like other people messing around with anything, the music, the art. We were very tight with that kind of thing, and we resented anybody else trying to get involved with that. And I think in the end it worked out, you know, better. It was. I think it worked for us in the end.
And again, part of the relationship is, you know, Zoots and I had a friendship for a long time, but this is the first time we actually worked together on something. So we had to get ourselves in sync together. And once we did, we both clearly had a comprehension that whoever was going to produce this record was going to have the patience of Joe, and would preferably be really good with guitars, and would also understand the instruction of, no, we don't want this built and sounding like everybody else at the moment. You know, we want somebody who can really capture what this band is live. But anyway, Mike Klink came up, and he just seemed to fit the bill.
And with Guns N' Roses, one of the unique things about that is it's not a very linear record. It takes you on a musical journey. It takes you different places, and that is due to all the different songwriters. And that's what I try to do with all the bands that I work with, is take you on a musical journey. It should take you left, it should take you right, it should take you highs and lows, and be an exciting listening experience to partake in. One of the things that I do is that I capture energy from bands that other people are not able to capture. And I don't want to try to put it in a bottle. I don't want to try to explain how I do it. It's just a way and a philosophy of the way that I work. I know when a band is peaked, I don't want to take them over the top. I get them all the way to the top, performance-wise, and as soon as I realize that that's the moment that they've peaked, then I pull back.
You know, what happened is with Appetite for Destruction, we took that on the road, and MTV was the big vehicle back then for rock music videos. I think that exploded for us. Paradise City, Welcome to the Jungle, and it just sort of went from there.
I get called up into the president of Geffen's office, and he looks at me and he says, the Guns N' Roses Appetite for Destruction is over. There's no debate, no discussion. The record's done. I'm instructing you as a president of the company, you're not allowed to go into anyone's office and badger them about Guns N' Roses anymore. The record's done. So I looked at him and I said, well, actually, the record's just beginning. I mean, you know, this record's still got to sell like 5 or 10 more million. I mean, you know, 200,000 that's just like a few people like going to the concert and getting excited. You know, we're not done yet. He said, you got to listen. He said, radio's not going to play it. MTV's vowed they'll never play it. It's done, and I'm instructing you to go do demos and make their next record. And I said to him, I said, actually, it's a good thing that I work for David Geffen and not for you, because I'm not going to listen to what you have to say, and I'm going to go see David Geffen.
In the first year of the company, I pretty much was responsible for signing all of the artists, and I quickly thought, this is not the 70s. I really need to get people with very different tastes in music than my particular taste in music, and I went out and hired what I thought was the best A&R team that I could find.
Geffen was this crazy place filled with like lots of A-type personalities who kicked ass at whatever they did, and man, people could get into a big fight there if they disagreed on things. But anyway, so I went up to David and, you know, I made my pitch, and he looked at me and he said, well, he goes, what is the one thing that I could do to make a difference in this situation? If you put the Welcome to the Jungle video on MTV, man, the record will literally explode overnight.
Zutat said to me that the only way we're going to break this record is if we can get it on MTV, and MTV did not want to play it. And I called my friend Tom Freston, and I said to him, just play it in the middle of the night. Don't report it, just play it, and let's see if there's a reaction to it.
It blew up MTV Switchboard when they played it at 4 a.m. They never had anything like this before. They were besieged from people requesting Guns N' Roses, and instantly it just started selling like a hotcake.
It was approximately 1 year ago that an LA club band, hoping to gain recognition, released their first album, Appetite for Destruction. Now, some 50 weeks later, that album sits on top of the Billboard charts, strengthened by the release of the new hit song, Sweet Child of Mine.
It was, well, funny enough, I feel the more people, the more relaxed I feel. And I don't know why that is, but some sort of reverse psychology. But we actually went from the clubs, a lot of clubs and sheds on the first tour, a couple of months. And then we went up to theaters. I think it was with the Cult. At one point, we ended up with the Cult on a U.S.-Canadian tour, Europe, theaters, clubs. And I think from there we branched out into, like, festivals. Like, I remember playing the Donington Festival, like the second band on the bill. You know, it's still light out.
But just as the band reached multi-platinum heights, tragedy brought them crashing back to earth. On August 20th, 1988, during the Guns set at the Monsters of Rock Festival in Donington, England, 2 fans were crushed and killed by the frenzied audience.
That was when the reality kicked in, that you can get to this all-time high, something that you can't compare to anything, and then have it go to an all-time low.
It really screws with your head. He drove to the show with his friends. They were having a good time. They got out of their car. They walked into the gig, and he didn't walk out.
The deaths at Donington added fuel to a growing critical fire against the band, and to the sentiment that GNR were headed for premature destruction.
But I can remember at a point on the East Coast when we were playing before Black Sabbath at Giant Stadium, I think it was. And, we go into the opening, Welcome to the Jungle, I think it was at the top. And people are running, to the stage. You're watching them run. And then the funny thing started happening is people started jumping off or climbing. They were trying to climb down the water pipes from the second tier down onto the main, football field. And these water pipes were busting. And as they were busting, the currents of water are spraying all over the place. Kids are falling, the pipes are falling, and they'll hit the ground. Boom, they get up. The security guard sees them. They're chasing them. And it was like this bizarre football game. And it was really, it's fans running to the front of the stage, but it was wild, And at that point, you go, wow, hey, things have changed,
One thing you learn about an influx of money, and especially a sudden influx of money, is that it may eradicate the problems that you're focused on at the moment, but it will present you with a completely new palette of problems to deal with, and not all of them are very pleasant. So, yeah, mental health. I think everybody connected to GNR has gone through a rough period at some point or another.
We went out, we toured, fast forward, we leave 85, 86, we leave on this tour. Nobody knows us. We're playing, opening for Iron Maiden in Canada, selling the back passes out front. Nobody knows who we are. We come back to LA, 14 months later, around the world a couple of times, and everybody wants to be your best friend. And you're like, wow, things have changed drastically. And then, of course, we all, we were in our 20s. We didn't have any experience with this kind of thing. And, of course, that's when drugs become popular, right?
What prompted you to decide to go clean?
Just kept getting in trouble, fucking up, being unhealthy. Just my lifestyle was really bad. Wasn't having any fun with it at all anymore. It was just a drag, the whole thing.
In yet more Guns N' Roses news, guitarist Izzy Stradlin, accused of urinating in the galley of an airplane en route from Indianapolis to Los Angeles 2 months ago, came up before a judge in Phoenix, Arizona yesterday and got off with a $2,000 fine and 6 months probation. Stradlin, who had been drinking on the plane and apparently couldn't gain access to a toilet, was taken off the plane during a stopover in Phoenix by FBI agents, who informed him that his behavior constituted a federal offense of interfering with the duties of a flight crew.
That was my, I guess they call it your low point, where you kind of bottom out. I think around 89 I bottomed out. I said, hey, I got to change. This isn't working for me anymore.
However, under the terms of a pretrial plea bargain, he was allowed to plead guilty to lesser charges of smoking during a non-smoking flight. Stradlin also agreed to spend 4 months in an alcohol treatment program.
The awards were not a picnic for all concerned, however, including Guns N' Roses guitarist Izzy Stradlin, who was punched in the face by Motley Crue vocalist Vince Neil, as Stradlin walked off stage with his manager Alan Nivens. This was apparently Neil's reaction to a 1988 incident at an LA rock club in which Stradlin allegedly assaulted Neil's wife, Charisse, then had her ejected from a room at the club.
We're walking off the stage, and Vince Neil leaps up out of the audience and hits Izzy right in the face.
The MTV Video Awards in 1989, after the show was over, I walked backstage and there was this huge scene going on.
I went up to Izzy, said, as you touch my wife again, I'll kill you. And he's all, you, and I knocked him out.
Izzy brought me around for some pivotal stuff, man, like the GNR Rolling Stones gig at the Coliseum. I was there with him, in the van and at the Bonaventure Hotel where their backstage had been set up, and I was just in awe, man. It was amazing.
On stage, but I've tried every other fucking way. And unless
certain people in this band get their shit together, these will be the last Guns N' Roses shows you'll fucking ever see. Because I'm tired of too many people in this organization dancing with Mr. Goddamn Brownstone.
I had a pretty insane, I grew up kind of half crazed, you know. I mean, I grew up in the Midwest. You know, we're smoking weed, we're doing all the wrong things at 16. And then it adds up over the years, and, you know, you fast forward to 91. I'm like, wow, you know, I always wanted to play in a band. I was like, oh, wow, there we are on TV, CNN. Riot in St. Louis. Oh, yeah, Riot in St. Louis. Oh, you know, so you're kind of going, wow. It becomes a bit much, the whole thing. And I think around 89, December 15th, 89 is when I got sober. That's when I decided to quit drinking, quit doing drugs, quit being a goof.
Steven Adler left the band this week in the middle of recording sessions for the group's next album. According to Guns N' Roses management, Adler departed because he wanted to work with guitarist Andy McCoy, best known as Michael Monroe's partner in Hanoi Rocks, a group much admired by Guns N' Roses. Adler's replacement is California drummer Matt Sorum from The Cult.
How come Steven left the band at this critical juncture?
Steven didn't leave the band.
Or how come you and
Steven was fired.
Oh, okay.
Steven, we gave him every ultimatum. We tried working with other drummers. We had Steven sign a contract saying if he went back to drugs, then he was out. Yeah. He couldn't leave his drugs. And other things have happened involved with Steven, that Steven is basically someone I used to know. It makes me feel bad, yeah. But there's other things beside the band that he was involved in with his drugs that have been very dangerous and scary, and that I want nothing to do with him.
Is that what you were talking about when you were opening for the Rolling Stones in L.A. last year? And you said somebody in this band has been dancing with Mr. Brownstone, essentially?
Oh, there was... majority of the band was at that time, or too much alcohol, or too much something. Me, I was eating too much or whatever, and just sitting on my ass too much.
Yeah. How's it going with the new drummer? Is he fitting right in? Or it must be very hard at this point to bring somebody new into the band, isn't it?
It was a miracle. Yeah. He has saved the band's life. He came in, he's in an up mood, he works, he writes his own material. Yeah. He writes a lot, he works real well with us. He takes suggestions well, he keeps everybody in line, keeps the timing great. You know, I mean, he played 29 songs in a month.
New drummer changes the attack of a band. What has Matt done for the group?
As a drummer, I would say, I don't know, it's good, you know?
Is it different from Steven?
Yeah, it's a different style, but you know, they're both good drummers, and you know, Matt's working good.
Does he write too? I mean, does he contribute songs?
He hasn't with us. You know, he's been busy learning, you know, a lot of songs. I think 30 songs or something like that, as well as the band too. You know.
Izzy, are you thrilled?
Yeah, very excited.
How excited are you?
I'm into it.
It must be great to get back together, right? Was it hard to get everybody together and say, we're going to go play this gig? Because you didn't have to, right?
No, we didn't have to. It was something we wanted to do, I think. Actually, it was kind of mixed. I don't know exactly who wanted to, who might not have wanted to, but everybody's here, you know.
Did everything fall right into place as soon as you walked out on stage? Was it just like it was?
Night, yeah, it was great. It was, you know, we hadn't played together with everybody for a while, and you know, we've got Diz playing keyboards and Matt, you know, on drums. So it's the first time we've all played like that. It was great. It felt so comfortable.
So then 89, 90, 91, I had 3 years of sobriety, 3 years of still being in Guns N' Roses. We're doing Use Your Illusions. We go out on the road and, you know, completely sober.
Once there was this rock and roll guy rolling on the street. Time went by and it became a joke. We just needed more and more forbidden. Time went by and it all went up in smoke.
When Axl would start to go off on a tirade, I'd kind of stand there and go, oh, come on, let's go, next song. You know, kind of embarrassing, but, you know.
That's how it felt in the audience, too.
No shutting him up. Yeah. Once he gets going, that's it.
No kidding.
Get in the ring. 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 Just as it loud on the dog. Get in the ring. Get in the ring.
Heights are blaming Axl Rose for a riot which broke out Tuesday night at the Guns N' Roses show at the Riverport Amphitheater. The fracas resulted in at least 60 injuries to police and fans, 16 arrests, and reportedly over $1 million worth of damage to the brand new amphitheater. It's only the second concert ever to be held there. According to police reports and eyewitness accounts, about an hour into the show, Rose spotted a fan in the front row taking photos of him and got upset. Cameras are not allowed into the amphitheater. Rose reportedly yelled several times for security to stop the fan from taking pictures. When they failed to respond, Rose announced that he would get the guy himself and then jumped into the crowd and allegedly pummeled the fan. Venue security jumped in to pull Rose off the fan.
Now, get that guy and take that. I'll take it, goddammit. Well, thanks to the lame-ass security, I'm going home. We're out of here.
In a lousy season for concert tours, the Guns N' Roses show, with Skid Row opening up, prospered. And of course, there was never a dull moment. Every show, it seemed, featured an Axl Rose rant or two. And in St. Louis, after he jumped into the crowd to protect a fan or grab a camera or something, an actual riot ensued, resulting in 15 arrests, 80 injuries, a purported $200,000 worth of property damage, and the band's most heartfelt thanks in the notes to its next album. In the great tradition of Jerry Lee Lewis, the Rolling Stones, and Led Zeppelin, trouble was Guns N' Roses' constant companion. They were fined by local officials in New York and Indiana and sued by their former drummer, Steven Adler, who charged that they'd encouraged his incapacitating heroin addiction. But the band roared on, bringing its world-beating sound to Europe in August, and at every stop along the way, insisting that its long-delayed brace of Use Your Illusion albums would be coming out real soon. With a new, strictly sales-driven ranking system recently instituted, Guns N' Roses became the first band to debut at number 1 and 2 on the Billboard chart. One of the band's founding members, guitarist, songwriter, and singer Izzy Stradlin, had resigned from the group, ending a musical relationship with hometown pal Axl Rose that dated back 15 years. In a statement, Rose said that Stradlin and the rest of the band had been going in separate directions, and that Stradlin was, quote, not really into touring or video or anything like that. Rose also added that Stradlin's departure was, quote, kind of a shock to my system. Izzy Stradlin's place in Guns N' Roses has been filled by guitarist Gilby Clarke from another LA band called Kill for Thrills, and he made his debut with the Guns at a tour opening show in Worcester, Massachusetts on Thursday.
Three months after I was gone, Izzy was gone. And in point of fact, I had to, I was actually in Switzerland at the time, and I look at my phone and I go, why is Izzy calling me? And he was telling me that he'd had enough, there'd been some major fracas and problem in Germany, and it had freaked him out entirely, and he was done with it all. And they still had their first show at Wembley coming up, and I had to talk him into going to the Wembley gig. In fact, I rented him a suite at the hotel nearest the venue, and told him, look, just tell somebody on the crew to call you when Axl's there, and then you can go down and be a part of the gig and play. But you know, you cannot walk away from this gig. It will have a detrimental effect, not just on the band, but on you as well. So you have to see it through, see this Wembley gig through. But he was done after that Wembley gig. And again, I'm going to reiterate this. I had no idea that Izzy was going to jump, and I had no idea that he was going to jump that fast. But for me, once Izzy was gone, that is a major element of the band gone. And, you know, from there on, it's just a matter of time as it all falls apart.
I don't remember how old I was, but it was 91, and I was like, you know what? It's time to change, man. I'm pulling out of this thing. I've had enough. It's a little bit. It was absolutely out of control, and you know, I still loved all the guys. It was a really tough decision because these were like my buddies. They're like, you know, we went through a lot together, and now we're all still friends. I talk to all these guys every week or two, and we're all still good friends, and. But, you know, in 91, I was like, you know what, I'm going to do something else, man. There's more to it than this. There's got to be more.
So what was there after you left? What happened next?
I did nothing, man. It was great. I went back to Indiana. I got some land. We built a quarter-mile oval. Started racing flat track motorcycles. Just doing like Indiana stuff, you know, outdoors, fun. Tried ice racing on flat track bikes, and you know, just cool stuff. Just hanging out. I went back and just hooked up with all my old friends from grade school, high school.
When the day I left that van, you know, I was driving out of California, man, I got to that state line and I just felt like this big weight came off my back, man. I was like, wow, you know. I didn't know what the hell I was going to do, but I just felt this big relief. And it was a lot of that, you know, let it behind, let it go.
He's become very health conscious over the years, and surfing and biking, mountain biking, I think are, you know, two of his greatest pleasures. He loves to travel. I don't think he particularly cares to be Izzy Stradlin of Guns N' Roses all the time.
And back in 1990, I stopped using drugs and I stopped drinking. And suddenly, you know, you've got all this energy, and it's like, you know, what do you do with it? From since I was a really young kid, you know, I had a mini bike, and then, you know, each few years I get something bigger and bigger. And it was something that I'd forgotten about during the Guns N' Roses days. Just, you know, so much indulgence, you know, and that old rock and roll lifestyle bullshit, you know, drinking and once that stopped, I was like, you know, I was like, wow, man, bicycles and, you know, motorcycles, and, yeah, because when I was out in California, I would go out in the desert and ride. You spend a day on a motorcycle in the desert, and you come back and you just feel good and calm, relaxed. Great escape for me, it saved my life.
I don't know, 6 to 12 months of just being off the radar. I hooked up with some guys out here on the West Coast again, and came back out to sunny California, started tracking. I signed a 2-album solo deal with Geffen Records, and we did Juju House.
There was no band. It was just an idea. You know, he wanted to make a record. There was no thought of a tour. There were no gigs or anything. I think he just had, you know, a few, like, I don't even know if well, I know for sure we did not have all of the songs. He had some ideas. And so that's how that began. And so, you know, we needed a studio and we needed a band. So we ended up, I'm not sure how it was found. Oh, and we needed Alan Niven. And so we got Alan back, and, or Izzy got Alan back, you know, because at that point he had not been managing GNR anymore. So we got Alan back, and I think Alan found the recording studio for us because Izzy did not want anything to do with Hollywood at that point. So he rented a house sort of in the outskirts, and it was closer to this place that Alan found in Redondo Beach.
I started. Well, you know, I've always got a guitar somewhere. If it's not, you know, my car, it's in my closet. There's always a guitar. So, you know, the songs come now and then. You're sitting on the couch, you're riding your bike, you're walking down the street. You get a melody, you get some phrase, something happens, you get this idea. So I've always been doing that since I was a little kid, just making up stuff, you know, and kind of jamming along.
He wanted a guitar player like Rick Richards. And so, you know, let's get Rick Richards. So we did. And then I had been playing at the very tail end of the Broken Homes. We had Chalo Quintana.
The first week, it was one of those things where you're going, I say to myself, I said, well, I can sing enough, you know, to pull this off. And the only question would have been whether or not my voice would take it, you know, whether it would hold up to it. I always sang at GNR rehearsal. Most of the rehearsals, it was usually just the band. Axl wasn't usually at all the rehearsals, so I'd always been singing guidebooks for Welcome to the Jungle and Paradise City and all that stuff. And it was always something I'd been doing, but it was a pretty easy step to go into that.
He had taken a lot on that I don't think, even myself, you know, I just assumed that he would be able to sing and write lyrics, you know, without really even thinking about it, that the fact that he hadn't really done that before. You know, he hadn't fronted a band, as far as I know or knew. And so, you know, I guess, I mean, looking back on it, it was a pretty Herculean achievement, you know, of him to just jump into that role and become, you know, the lyricist, singer, and front person of his own band. You know, that's a massive jump. So you know, kudos to him on pulling that off and doing it so effortlessly that I don't think any of us really, it didn't even register with us that was a hard thing to do.
I guess the riders must have radically changed, right? I mean, when you're GNR, you can get the green M&Ms. When we did Juju Hounds, was it the same thing where you're like, you know, where the hell's the extra strings, or where the towels, or no?
No, it's a totally different game. I mean, for one, all the guys in my band, they'd never been in that sort of situation, so they never became spoiled or jaded or just, you know, delusional about, you know, their status. So, you know, we'd go in. No, it was like it was totally different, and it was actually pretty easy going. I mean, it was really just fun. You know, it was really a lot of fun, a lot of hard work, but it was fun.
He was very gracious in allowing us to have input, and I think everyone in the room, we were all very aware and intent on trying to make an album that he wanted to make. You know, so I don't think anyone was pushing their own agendas in any way. It just happened that all the guys that ultimately were involved were very like-minded people musically to begin with. So it was the most effortless situation I think I'd ever encountered then, and you know, and now.
Speaking about the reaction to the acquittals. There have been appeals from President Bush on down, appeals this evening for calm in Los Angeles. Those appeals largely have been respected, but we're looking now at the exceptions, the fire that we're seeing, the violence that we've been reporting in some isolated areas of South Central Los Angeles. This live picture is coming to us from KCAL TV. They have a reporter on the scene. CNN's Robert Vito is there as well. We'll have more details for you, but right now the picture says it all. We are seeing fires. There have been scenes of men, perhaps men and women, racing across the screen. Fire trucks are in evidence, and you can see that the police now are on the scene. Let's listen in.
And we were where we were, which was down there out that window. It's down in Redondo Beach. That was much closer to the sort of epicenter of what was going on. So I think the day that we rolled out of there, it may have been prior to Charlie's arrival, because I remember it was Stan Lynch from Tom Petty's band, from the Heartbreakers, who was playing drums. And I remember we were playing some like Chuck Berry song or something, and it was Stan. And we had asked the engineer to come over the microphone to let us know in our headphones if shit like started to get squirrely close by, you know, or started to look like it was coming towards us. And sure enough, he's like, you know, automatic weapons fired on Hawthorne and fucking Torrance or whatever, which was like, you know, 3 blocks away. So we're like, you know, that was when boom. And so Izzy, you know, we just grabbed all the shit and made a run for it. And I'll never forget looking to ask Stan if, you know, if he was going to get out of there. And I literally just have this vision of headphones sort of floating in the air.
So the LAPD is in the process of calling in reinforcement. Extra police officers to the 77th station in South Central Los Angeles. Let's listen in again.
We bounced out immediately. We went to Chicago, moved the whole kit and caboodle up to Chicago. And that's when actual rehearsals began, because we had the band. So we got Charlie and Rick, and we holed up at the Knickerbocker Hotel in Chicago, and we booked rehearsal time at Chicago Rehearsal Complex, CRC, and then I think that's what it's called. And then we booked studio time and continued work on the album. You know, wrote a lot of songs there that sort of came out there. I believe Shuffle It All became what it was in Chicago. A lot of the final versions of those songs happened there. And so that's where a lot of the meat of the stuff took place. In fact, all the, you know, the videos in that record are all shot in Chicago.
Shuffle It All makes it sound like you're kind of exhausted by the whole rock and roll lifestyle. Is that an accurate reading of the song as you wrote it at the time?
That song was a song that Jimmy and I put the music together for first. He had this bass riff, and we put that song together without any lyrics first, and started putting the lyrics together, and I had a lot of lyrics for that song, like more than any on the album. It took the longest for me to write that one in. Yeah, it ended up being a lot of, I guess, just flashing back on constantly living out of a suitcase and constantly traveling, but at the same time enjoying it. But yeah, at that time I think it was, the baggage was getting a little heavy maybe.
If we were doing something new that Izzy hadn't developed lyrics yet, he'd sort of just mumble shit, you know, and you just mumble stuff. And then maybe you go back later and find out the syllables and the sort of phrasing that may or may not work with the rhythm of the track, you know. And at this one point he was singing something or shouting something that we all in the control room just heard as Juju Hounds. Izzy and I had a mad appreciation for, you know, the reggae and the sort of that part of the world in the Caribbean, and, you know, influenced by a lot of those guys as well. And so I remember, you know, I was looking up, you know, terms, you know, in Jamaican sort of patois slang. And I was coming up with shit that, you know, later on I would tell Mikey Dread, who came down and helped us with a couple of songs, and he'd be laughing like, "No, man, no, you know, you can't be calling the band that, man," you know. And it turned out they meant things that, you know, I hadn't understood. We didn't go with any of those, but yeah, that's where the name sort of came from.
A veteran of giant stadiums and arenas, Stradlin says he's looking forward to a scaled-down club tour with the Juju Hounds.
It's just more of a case of, you know, back to ground one, low budge. Let's just go play. You know, you write your songs, you play them, record them. You know, we're lucky we can put out a record and then just go and play. You know, the songs we record. I just took up where I left off with Guns N' Roses, but the big difference was you go from the stadium superstar act band situation right to ground. Back, you know, you're playing in Amsterdam, you're playing in Brussels, you know, you're in Europe, and they're like, oh yeah, it's the guy, but you know, you're back to the theater. So we start the tour, we do a round of clubs, cool stuff, you know, and then we do the second round of the same tour, same year on the Juju Hound record. We branch into theaters, and it didn't take long. We're right up into the 5,000-6,000 seater range, and crowds were rocking. Everything's on time. It's fantastic, and you know, put in 7 or 8 months doing that.
We didn't do a lot of opening. We did, again, you know, I think Izzy was aware of the bit of the international situation with the kind of music that we were playing, and so we headed to Europe first before we did anything anywhere else. We did one show in Chicago, and then we jumped on a plane, and actually we went to Copenhagen in Denmark first to mix the record. So Izzy and I were there for a number of months, and we rented a little apartment in Copenhagen, and so we started the tour. If I remember correctly, we started the tour there on like a promo thing, and we didn't really go in a bus or a van. We took trains, which was a new way of doing it for me. I'd never done it, haven't done it since. But we rode on trains. So we play the gig and we get in go to the train station afterwards, and then zoom to the next spot and do it again.
With this band, it's very simple and just straightforward music, and the fans. I mean, this trip here to Japan, the fans were just great, just fantastic. And I think that has a lot to do with it. There's a good vibe amongst the band as well, and that's important. That's real important. I mean, that can, you know, I think that determines. You can, I mean, if you go to see a band, you can see if everybody's not getting along or something. There's something. I don't know if you can pinpoint it, but the band vibe is good. It's a lot of both, I guess. It's I would say, I guess, musically, probably first. Well, but I think they're equally important. The personality and the music compatibility is important. And it seems to with Juju Hounds, we've got the best of both, so it seems to work good.
So we had covered almost all of Europe, and then there were Japan. There's a Japan-Australia run, and so it was only after all of that did we book a proper U.S. run.
John Bon Jovi was very, very keen to have Izzy open for him, and Izzy basically looked at me and said, "Niv, I'd rather play clubs." He didn't want to go through the machine, and I don't think he wanted to be a part of that kind of a tour.
And the Guns N' Roses guitarist who left that group in 1991 amid much recrimination is back on stage with the band, at least temporarily, pinch hitting for the guitarist who replaced him, Gilby Clarke. Clark recently broke his fretting wrist in a motorcycle accident, so Guns frontman Raxl Rose put in a fence-bending call to Stradlin, who has a band of his own called the Juju Hounds, and persuaded him to rejoin for a few weeks to play some overseas dates.
I had time off in Indiana. I wasn't really doing anything important. I was working on bikes, motorcycles, and thought, well, maybe it's fun, you know. They're playing Turkey, they played Greece, they played Israel. I thought maybe it's cool to go see those places. I'd never been. And I knew all the music, so it wasn't like I had to study or practice much. You know, I just take a guitar and go over. But the main reason was, for the year and a half since I left them, they had never paid me all the money that I was owed. Yeah, because there was dispute of what's what. So I told them, I said, look, tell your people to call my people and write up some paperwork and, you know, pay me my fucking money, and I'll gladly come over and help you guys out. Because they were kind of in a position where if they didn't do the shows, they would have lost, like, a lot of money. And, you know, Axl said he had his big $3 million house and your mortgage payments were high. And I said, well, that's okay. I said, pay me what you guys owe me and I'll go do it. So sure enough, you know, the papers were signed, faxed, and I got on a plane. But after doing it, I was like, you know, I could never go back and live like those guys live on tour like they do and be a part of it. I just can't relate to it at all.
Feels good because, you know, when he left the band, it was a little weird. You know, I mean, it was for different reasons. He was feeling, you know, like he kind of wanted to do his own thing, and when we split, we really haven't really spoken to each other. You know, and I've spoken to him a few times, Stuff's spoken to him a few times, you know, but not like it used to be. So when he came back, at first when I saw him, it was a little strange. But once we got up on stage, it feels just like the old days. I look over him now, and it's like, wow, it's kind of trippy, you know.
We did 117 Degrees, which we did later. I think we did that around 95. So there was like a 3 or 4 year space there. We did 2 solo records, and I did the last Geffen record was I think 95 or 96. So, you know, around that point when my second album was finished, I knew that I was going to be free of any record company influence or deals, and I actually was looking forward to that. And as soon as I turned in the last record, you know, I was on it. And also I was free of management at that point. You know, you got to understand, I went through a period of, you know, 84, 85. You end up doing these management deals, and you need a manager when you're starting out. And then, you know, I think I had management for 10 years. And then anyway, 95, 96 is when I started on the solo stuff again, and there was no label involved. And my intention was really just to do the record and see what's going to happen and see where I can go with it. And the internet, I'd heard of it, and I was kind of interested just because of, you know, the obvious advantages. Ease of distribution, you know, you can stay in California, you can stay in New York, you can stay in London, wherever you want to be, you can stay there and do what you're going to do. But I didn't really plug in. I was like, you know, I don't know, it's new, I'll wait and see, you know. And so I did these records, and we ended up doing, I think, one licensing deal for Japan on one of them. We'd go over there, we'd play like a couple weeks of shows, come back. even when I left the band in Guns N' Roses, we still talked on the phone for a while. And I've done a lot of stuff with him, and he's done a lot of stuff with me over the years. We've always been kind of on the same wavelength, and we still do a lot of stuff together. The two main bands that I've had are the guys I play with now, Rick and Taz, and then the Guns N' Roses guys.
So for River, Ride On, and On Down the Road, were these 24-track studio, 2-inch reel-to-reel, or how did you end up recording those?
We did them all over the place. We did a record up in Seattle at some little studio that I think Nirvana and their drummer had worked at. Talented guy, Dave Grohl.
Yeah.
Dave Grohl. We did some stuff up there because Duff knew, Duff's from Seattle.
Looking at the ocean blue, sitting thinking here of you, casting light down from the moon.
And we went in the studio there, a little place with a cave built into the side of this cliff. It was very cool, tiny little place. But yeah, I think it was 24-track, 2-inch tape. Like a Dog we did down in Dallas, Texas at Nomad Studios. And that was done on Pro Tools, 24-track into Pro Tools. And I got to say, the time to do the record was cut down by about a quarter, maybe half.
So it was all digital. You didn't bounce it down a quarter inch and then mix, or it was just it's all digital, Like a Dog.
I think we might have taken it down to 1/4-inch tape when we finally did the mastering, but everything was done to Pro Tools, and I got to say it was fun, man. It was fast. I got to say
too. It sounds really good. I mean, I was telling you, Like a Dog to me is it's such a raw sounding record. I had no idea that this thing was done through Pro Tools.
Yeah, it was, and I was really relieved when we were finished. To compare it to other records and CDs, I was like, it sounds like it's. I hear a difference, but it's good. I like it. I liked it, so I was really pleased with it.
Who knows, when he's going to put a record out, because he never tells anybody. He doesn't promote it. He just records it and puts it up on digital media. Somebody made it an amusing, what to me was an amusing observation, that Izzy had put out 9 times as many records as GNR in the same period of time, and most people don't even know that he's putting music up into the ether, that you can download and you can play.
I don't listen, I don't wanna, I'm gonna do it the way that I wanna. I don't listen, I ain't gonna, I'm gonna do it the way that I do. I rode the Greyhound bus when I was 10 years old.
And there's some terrific songs. Obviously, he can live off the residual income of his publishing and the royalties he's supposed to be getting. And he finds happiness in this way, and he finds contentment not being a part of some fucking big, huge machine tied to Universal Group worldwide and all of the pressures there, because fundamentally he's a rock and roll musician at heart, as opposed to somebody with profound ambitions of the ego.
When I go, and I'll probably be back in a week or ride. It's likely to be so. Call me on the phone, said I met you here today.
You know, look at what he did with Juju Hounds. It was, let's go theatres and clubs. Let's dial it back. Let's concentrate more on the music. I don't want to spend 3 years making an album.
They got nothing on me. They got nothing on me. Yeah, Peter Fines got 'em in on time. Got nothing on me.
You've decided to get all these albums up and available for people to download online. So basically, you can get your music out to the world without a record label now.
Right.
Right.
It's fantastic.
And where do you want to go from here? You know, are you looking to go and gig some more? Do you have more recordings? Is this just sort of, I don't want to say a hobby, because that doesn't express a passion, right? Yeah.
Well, I think you touched on, you said something about resurfacing or this. Well, let me put it this way. Since 96, for 10 years, I've been recording these albums, been going all over the place. I travel all the time anyway, when I can in the summer. The music, has been piling up, and I'll do a licensing deal, for example, for Japan. One record went there for distribution, licensing. But then I'll get fans. I hear all the fans in Europe or South America or U.S. They're looking for the record. They can't get it. Glenn Miskell, who's an attorney up north, sent me an email back in May. They said contact these guys, Jeff at TuneCore, and that's how I got to you guys.
That's cool.
And once I got to you guys, you're talking 4 or 5 months of efforts. Once I hooked up with you guys, it was a matter of 2 weeks, and the stuff is up, and it's incredible.
What do you think about the whole digital thing? You've obviously made albums, and you wrote. One of the things I want to get out to people is, these songs that people know, you, either co-wrote them or you wrote them, and you certainly played on them.
Yeah.
So, you made albums, man. Pieces of art, front to back. And how do you feel about the idea that people can go online and take them one song at a time or only take pieces of your album? Does that bother you?
No, it doesn't bother me at all, man. I'm in.
Hello, we are Green Day. My name is Billy Joe, this is Mike, and this is Trey Cool. And we're here to induct Guns N' Roses into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The first time I saw Guns N' Roses on MTV, I thought one of these guys could end up dead or in jail. The opening riff of Welcome to the Jungle is a descending trip into the underworld of Los Angeles. This ride was not about parties, glamour, or power ballads. It was about the seedy underworld of misfits, drug addicts, paranoia, sex, violence, love, and anger in the cracks of Hollywood. It was a breath of fresh air. Appetite for Destruction is the best debut album in the history of rock and roll. Steven Adler, Matt Sorum, Dizzy Reed, Duff McKagan, Slash, Izzy Stradlin. Wherever you are, the way you played and weaved with Slash was an effortless craft. You got that fucking Ronnie Wood mojo, I'll tell you that right now.
Original guitarist Izzy Stradlin won't be there. He sends his best through Duff McKagan, saying in a statement, quote, "I have waited up to this point to see what will become of the GNR induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I would like to say thank you and gracias to Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for the acknowledgement of our works over the years as a band. Big thanks to all my bandmates who helped get us to where we are today. And of course, thank you to all of the people on this planet, including but not limited to the entire universe and beyond, etc., 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 who have supported Guns N' Roses from day one.
It's such a questionable existence, really, to be a musician. I mean, because there's just so many people that play, but I mean, there's no way, they can make a living doing it. I'm sure there's a lot of people, in California that when Guns N' Roses first started, you see so many bands, so many people, and, they disappear each year, and they disappear, but at the same time, I mean, when we started, that was the only thing that we were going to do. So, I mean, I guess instead of calling it a career, it was just, that was our life at that time. But nowadays, it's, I don't take it that seriously like that. I think Aggravation was a big inspiration for Guns N' Roses. The aggravation of being this band in L.A. that was not popular at all. It was very disliked in the beginning. Huge success, and suddenly everyone liked them. I mean, it was sort of aggravation, confusion, combined with indulgence and just stupidity, I guess. I don't know. Just all this stuff thrown into one big kettle, and that's some of the music that came out,
So negativeness feeding on itself.
Good negativity, a lot of negativity. Yeah, it sort of fed on itself. Yeah. Funny enough, though, I mean, once the band did make it big and everybody made a lot of money, suddenly there was, a lot of people coming out of the, the woodwork, they say, and countless lawsuits and stuff, and people claiming that they had written this and written that, and you're going, well, what's going on here? And you realize it's like, when something happens that big and there's that much money involved, there's also these other factors that surround it, and that was, that can be kind of disturbing as well.
About you now, I mean, you're very relaxed and enjoying yourself. Do you think you've returned to the original you, or do you think that you've become this way as a result of having gone through the hardships and whatnot of Guns N' Roses?
I think I've just sort of become this way, because as a kid I was always like angst all the time, always moving around, but gone through a lot of changes and a lot of different changes, I guess, from not knowing anything about what it was all about, but just wanting to play music and be able to travel. That was the only real reason I ever thought it would be great, because you think how great if you can form a band, which is like a small gang or something, or a group of friends, club or something, and then be able to take the club all over and travel. That was the main thing that appealed to me. I thought would be great if that could happen, and then that's something else. But I mean, it's never, I guess, like you imagine it. I've got no complaints on that. Thank you.
According to multiple sources, a Guns N' Roses reunion is imminent. If it all comes together, the band would headline the Coachella Music Festival in April.
According to Billboard, original Guns N' Roses members Slash and Axl Rose are reuniting for a 25-date stadium tour, including a stop at the Coachella Festival in April of next year.
Why would it be a big deal for Guns N' Roses to get back together and to go on tour?
This is something we thought would never happen.
this original lineup, or the members of it who might be together here, Slash,
The lineup for Coachella is expected to be announced on January 5th. Other stops on the tour reportedly include North American football stadiums and the opening of a new
mysterious
arena.
teaser trailer appearing in movie theaters across the U.S. has sparked rumors of a potential Guns N' Roses reunion. The trailer features an audience reacting to Welcome to the Jungle and adds fuel to a fire that's been circulating since the band's website was changed to the classic Guns N' Roses.
Duff McKagan posted his arm holding a bass on his Twitter, but also there's been some gossip. There's been a little chatter that this is going to happen, and it's come from people in the rock community, it's come from people in the Los Angeles community, and now there are sources telling news outlets that yes, they're going to reunite, possibly play 25 stadiums after Coachella, and make north of $3 million.
There is no word on which other former members might be involved in this reunion. Earlier this week, the band updated the homepage of its website to a picture of its classic-era Bullet logo, and movie theaters around the country have been running a cryptic teaser ad that features Welcome to the Jungle and Black and White Duff. There are rumors that classic drummer Steven Adler may play some sort of role in the concerts, which may also include guest appearances from guitarist Izzy Stradlin, but those are just rumors. There's been a lot of speculation surrounding the upcoming reunion of classic Guns N' Roses members. We know for sure that Axl Rose, Slash, and Duff McKagan are all involved, but there's been rumors on founding guitarist Izzy Stradlin possibly joining the band in some
When Guns N' Roses announced their 2016 reunion show for Coachella and subsequent dates, fans were left to speculate whether or not original guitarist for the band, Izzy Stradlin, would be joining them on stage for the momentous occasion. Finally, the silence has been broken and Stradlin addressed the speculation, much to his fans' dismay. At this point in time, I will not be playing at any of the April 2016 GNR shows. I've also not been in the studio recording or writing with any of the others recently. There is so much speculation, but so very little info that I thought I should
The Twitter account at Izzy Stradlin999 claims that Izzy has no involvement in the reunion at this time. While the account could easily be a fake, another tweet was posted showing video of what appeared to be Stradlin playing guitar and singing, giving some more weight to the Twitter. On top of that, Rolling Stone reached out to Stradlin, and he apparently left a voicemail to the magazine confirming that the Twitter account is real and that he is currently not involved in the reunion and won't be performing at the band's scheduled shows in April.
This is a song by Jonathan Edwards called Sunshine. Sunshine, go away today. Don't feel much like dancing. Some man's come is trying to run my life. Don't know what he's asking. He tells me I'd better get in line. Can't hear what he's saying. Someday soon I'm gonna make it mine. These ain't dues I've been paying. How much does it cost? I'll buy it. Time is always lost. I'll try it. He can't even run his own life. Be damned if you run mine.
This is one of the last great traditional rock bands who made some of the last great traditional rock albums. We never thought, it's like Led Zeppelin, we never thought we'd get them again.
With Izzy, that's just something that I can't really describe, to say. I don't really know what to say about Izzy. It's like, you know, you could have a conversation and think it's one way, and the next day it's another way. So, and I'm not trying to take any shots at Izzy. It's just, you know, his thing's kind of his thing, whatever that is.
Can I lie? Speed of sound, the words flow with it. These days are gone. Most of us have moved on. Still a few behind. And that's alright.
Izzy, were you going to say something then?
No.
No.
He lost his mind today. He left it out back on the highway on 65. She loved him yesterday. Yesterday's over. I said okay, and that's alright. Time moves on, that's the way. We live and hope to see the next day, and that's alright. Sometimes these things, they are so easy. Sometimes these things, they are so cold. Sometimes these things just seem to rip you right into. Oh no, man, don't let them get to you. She loved him yesterday. He laid a sister. She said okay, and that's alright. Burying her things today, way back out deep behind the driveway, and that's alright. Sometimes these women are so easy. Sometimes these women are so cold. Sometimes these women seem to rip you right into. Only if you let them get to you. You're out and you're old, and you take all that you own, and you take back your home, and you're just fucking gone. There's no logic here today. Do as you got to, go your own way. I said that's right. Time short, your life's your own, and in the end we are just dust and